Hi, guys. How are you doing? Excellent. I'm so excited to be here. If I wasn't standing up here, I'd be sitting exactly where you are. I love the show so much, and I think we all know why. What began as the story of two couples that recoupled has, over the course of 3 seasons, evolved into one of the most progressive, entertaining, and straight-up hilarious family comedies anywhere on television. Under the watchful eye of creator Marta Kauffman, Grace and Frankie has not only been a sensational showcase for its titular characters, but also for every branch of this thoroughly modern family tree, including Brooklyn Decker's Mallory and June Diane Raphael's Breanna. But Marta hasn't done it alone. She has assembled an amazing team of women and a few token men to tell this story, and we're so lucky to have them here with us today. So please help me welcome Marta Kauffman. Right here. Executive producer, Robbie, Rowe, Tollin. Come right here. We're just gonna fill in and down the row. Producer, Hannah K.S. Canter. Canter. June Diane Raphael. Thank you. Brooklyn Decker. And last but not least, Sarah Lucky. Is that everyone?
You know, it's everyone who's up here, except I feel kind of funny because there's another very important woman who's very involved with the show, our casting director, Tracy Lillienfield, who isn't up here. And I feel like she should be part of this panel.
Let's get her up here.
Tracy,
where are you?
here.
Where is she?
Where is she?
Come on,
Come on, Tracy.
Get in here.
Oh, she's so mad at me right now?
Yes.
We can make room. We'll make room.
I'm sorry, but I had to.
Come on. Honestly. Guys, give it up for Tracy. Oh, I love it.
I feel much better
Great,
now.
I'm so glad. Thank you all so much for being here today. I love this show so much. And you know what's so amazing is everyone I talk to about this show is a completely different type of person. I mean, I've talked to straight dudes about this show. I've talked to a lot of gay men about this show. It is just, the appeal is so across the board. Marta, has that surprised you, or is that what you were going for?
Look, it's definitely surprising, mainly because I bought into the hype that all the networks have been feeding me, that people aren't interested in stories about women or stories about older women. And by the way, bullshit. It's bullshit. And, you know, the theory, even with Friends, when people said they were going to be interested in younger people, the whole point is write stories that people care about and characters that you want in your life, people will watch.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about, you had a lot of sort of story to cover in the first season. You had these two couples who were recoupling, but after you got past that, you were really able to dig into these characters as humans and really expand. And I thought in season 2 and 3 particularly, with June's characters and Brooklyn's characters, we really got to
I play more than one character?
And Brooklyn's character. Multiple characters at all. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. When people ask, are you a Grace or a Frankie, I say I'm a Breanna. And as a Breanna, we are multifaceted.
Many different people.
Yes, we
That's
have
true.
many dimensions to us. But I mean, what has been the joy, Robbie, of sort of getting the opportunity to really spend time with these women and expand on them as the seasons have gone on?
We are so lucky because we have a really good time. We all work very, very hard. We have the most intense work ethic, and we just we love to play and laugh, and that's like the perfect combination. And I got my peeps, It's like, it's the most powerful gaggle of women I've ever had the honor of working with. It's really amazing.
And in terms of what the story element of that, look, we always said the show is about that time in your life. We always said that the show is about, you can start your life over at any point. Well, the first 2 seasons weren't really about that. The first 2 seasons were about recovery from a trauma. And then in the 3rd season, we really started to be able to do what we always felt the show was about, which is starting your life over. And even with Mallory, who's starting her life over at this point, Breanna is starting her life over in a way in the 4th season. Our characters are all getting this opportunity at different stages of their lives.
And then also, I think from behind the camera to watch it play out on a meta level with Jane and Lily, who are leads in series for the first time in a significant way, maybe ever in their careers, and they're
It's a huge opportunity for them, as up and comers. It's a really big opportunity for them to kind of break through finally.
But they're kind of reborn in a way, and they're finding a new stuff within them that they didn't even know was there, and are hooking into a part of themselves that's like just being awakened, and so awesome to watch.
And breaking the wall. They were going on national television talking about vibrators, for which they weren't allowed to say the word vibrator. It's like, what? You can talk about erectile dysfunction, but you can't talk.
Can't mention a dry vagina.
Well, I want to, it's like that thing. It's like, if men could get pregnant, you would be able to have all of the care you needed at a drop of a hat. It's true. But I want to ask, setting season 3 in this world of the creation of vibrators and at this company, what excited you about, I was trying to find a different way around it. But what?
Didn't do it.
Okay. What excited you about all these vibrators, Marta, in season 3?
Look, I think that it's the symbol, it's the metaphor, that these women are vibrant, that they are still sexual human beings, that they're still human beings and deserve everything that everybody else experiences. I think we have, for too long, dismissed women over a certain age. It happens all the time. It happens in stores. It happens, walking down the street. It happens trying to get a taxi cab. It happens on a bus. So this was an opportunity to say, hey, we are alive, and we want to feel alive. So that's what was exciting. And also to say vibrator a bunch of times.
Well, I like to, in season 2, that storyline sort of got its start when Breanna and then Lily's character were sort of getting the yam lube going. June, what was it like sort of getting to share those scenes with Lily and just doing nothing but talking about yam lube?
It was amazing. It was so silly. To do scenes with Lily Tomlin was a dream. It's a dream come true. She's so physical and playful and fun. And I think she learned a lot from watching me. But no, it was amazing, and one of truly the best professional times of my life. There's no other way to put it. I could not believe I was doing comedy with Lily Tomlin.
And let me just say, as much as, June, I think you're being quite humble here, watching the two of them together, there was a unique spark between them that we saw from the first time we put them in a scene together. June is very in the moment, has an improv background, and Lily, surprisingly, improv is not her thing. But you put the two of them together, and this kind of magic happened. So I think June also brought some really cool things out of Lily.
Wow, I'm good to just die. I've lived my life, and I'm good. I'm good to go. If I don't make it back to LA on this plane, it's all right. It's all right.
But you bring up an interesting point, because one of my favorite things about this show is that while there are two separate families, it actually just feels like one family. The way, you guys, the daughters deal with the sons, who then deal with the opposite parent. It all feels so entwined in a way that I really am charmed by. When you were creating the show, was that sort of always the plan, or did that, like you're saying, just reveal itself through the chemistry?
Look, so much reveals itself, and I have to say part of that is casting. That when you put together a cast, in putting together a cast, you have to put together a cast that you can imagine, all right, this is one giant, weird, dysfunctional family. And what are the, how far can you push that before it just feels disjointed? So that was certainly part of it. And then part of it is just things, the show begins to tell you what it is. And in the beginning, we didn't realize, for example, that Robert and Saul were going to be such an important part, that their relationship was going to be taken so seriously. That was news to us. It was news. There was so much news to us. I mean, we knew they were sisters, but we had no idea that there would be something so magical between them, so that we would just, itch to write scenes for them. There was a lot we just didn't know until you put it together. And because there's no pilot for Netflix, you sort of discover it as you go along. And we got. We started with all the right elements, and then we got lucky that we had enough really smart women and people to be able to look at it and go, oh, this is what we have. This is what we have.
Well, Tracy, I want to ask, because the show is built, I love it. Because the show, is, as Marta was saying, sort of about these women in a later point of their life, it has to be such a joy to cast a show like that, because you get to tap into a reservoir of performers that are not probably getting, tons of offers. What has that been like?
It's not the easiest part of the job,
Really?
but gratifying, and they are so happy to be there. And we've cast this season particularly a lot of people older than Jane and Lily. I mean, significantly older, and they are thrilled. These are people who don't have even a chance to audition all that often, let alone book a job. And it's really, and they have stories to tell. They spend a lot of time in my office, and we listen and we learn a lot from them, and that's been thrilling.
And we've gotten to work with some incredible people. Millicent Martin. Everything has gone from my mind. Who are some of the other amazing...
It's supposed to be on the panel. I don't know.
I just want to say, our office is up like a billion stairs on like a very high second floor of a building at Paramount, and we had to put in a stair chair so that we could have elderly people come read for us. So sweet. No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
The other thing is when these actors, these older character actors, some with tremendous credits, turn around to do their coverage and they're facing Jane and Lily on set, they're like, they're just so stunned, I think, and so thrilled to be there.
And let me just say, I don't think it's just the actors. We have an AD whom we love. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. He's in his 70s. It was getting hard for him. And we decided there's no way that we can't move forward with this man because he's getting older. So we worked into the schedule a way that the second AD could cover for an hour so he could rest and come back, because you can't, we're doing a show about people who are older. We got to figure out a way to work with the people who are of this age.
I love that, yeah. Brooklyn, I want to ask you, Mallory's had a really interesting journey over the course of the 3 seasons of this show. And, she has, in the last season, as Marta was saying, really chosen to start over. What excites you about taking her on this journey now?
Everything excites me about it. Mallory's so interesting because she is someone who I can relate to, who I think a lot of women can relate to, because, especially moms, because you live your life for your family, for your children, for your husband, and not necessarily for yourself ever. And so that is something that Mallory continues to struggle with. And I don't know that she ever thought that she would get to start over, that her life would be anything else. In season 4, you kind of see her, without giving any spoiler alerts, like going back into the professional world for the first time since college, trying to attempt that. Spoiler. I won't give any details. But, I think the idea, it's kind of mirroring, she always wants to be just like Jane, just like her mother. And so when, she's kind of mirroring this evolution, this sort of reawakening that Jane kind of went through as well. And I think it makes sense for Mallory, and it's so much fun to play because it's just different and it feels very real, and it's something, I think a lot of us can really connect to in real life. And that's what we want to watch. We want to watch stories that we really connect to on a deep level.
One of my favorite moments of last season was when you have the conversation with your father where you actually tell him what's happening, what's happening in your life, and this is coming. And it's just, I sometimes actually feel like I'm watching a documentary or I'm watching family members have conversations. What has it been like just over the 3 years to build those relationships with the people who play, your family?
It's wild because I think time has given us such an advantage, because I do think when you work with people for years.
And disadvantage.
Yes, well, in a lot of ways, yes. But I think you get to really know each other in a way where, it feels very intimate. June and I both became mothers on this show and went through that, I went through that on screen and off screen, and we went through that with our cast and crew and the execs. And so I think, when you just have time on your side, it really helps facilitate those relationships in real life, which I think really helps translate on screen.
I wonder, I would love to throw this to Sarah Lucky. Sarah is one of our primo editors. We worked with Sarah before she was an editor. We adore Sarah. And I would think that you get to see a perspective that actually we don't get to see as much, that you get to see the development.
It's funny because I've been on since season 1, and it's interesting how everybody really did become family, and the relationships really are real. Like you talk about that scene with Brooklyn and Martin, and watching the dailies, like you just really believe it. I mean, Martin, Lily, and Jane and Sam, they all give such amazing performances always, and of course the kids always, but their connection really grew over the 4 seasons, and it's like the Lily and June scenes, they just really have this friendship that you truly believe, and I, as an editor, love watching them together. When they get stoned or anything like that, it's just, but it's such a, like, you really believe that they have this special connection, and I think everybody really fell into their own and grew as a family on and off screen, which is really nice,
I also feel with this show, there are tons of scenes where I don't necessarily know in the moment that they have succeeded entirely. There's been a couple of moments where I've thought, I guess we got that and we're moving on, but I don't know. I'm not sure what just happened. And then I see it cut. And that's you too, Marta, and Robbie, but I see the cut and it's all there and more. I don't know what's going on in that editing room. I really
Magic.
don't. But it is some sort of magic because, especially scenes where I thought, oh, this is funny, or this made me smile. The jokes land in a really hard way, and the heart lands harder. It's kind of amazing to see how much that part of the process elevates the show.
So much happens in the editing room, and when we're on set, we watch for that, but it's all about pacing and timing. It's like, as you say, the story gets written.
Somebody once said there are 3 movies. There's the one you write, the one you shoot, and the one you cut. And they can be very different. It's the last
It's
rewrite.
true, yeah. But everybody makes it so easy. I mean, the actors, the performances, the writing, it makes it easy, which is nice for me.
And you're not doing anything with the footage you find of just like
Gag reel.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
I've
curious.
said some really horrible things
save it
about
all.
some of my castmates. You're not doing anything
Save
with
it all,
that,
yeah.
right?
We'll
Always
show
got
you
a hot
later.
mic, that one. Always got a hot mic. But Sarah, what are the challenges of editing this show?
Honestly, it's funny you say that because there really aren't. Like, I mean, everything has their ups and downs, but it really is, the writing is so great, the jokes, it's always funny, and the acting is just so easy.
Sarah's
to
being
watch.
nice.
No, but it is. I mean, there's always challenges, but honestly, like, I get excited every day to watch their dailies, and it's always funny, and sometimes it's hard to make it work exactly, but it really does find its place. And I don't know, like, this is probably the best show I've ever worked on. It really is, just like,
It's so nice.
just well, not all the relationships.
Some of the
and
challenges
everything, yeah.
that I see in the editing, in the editing of the show, there is always a fine line that you walk between what was the best performance and where were her hands.
Oh, that. Well, that would be hide a lot. Yeah.
Continuity is and it's something that we're sticklers for. Hannah, Robbie, and I are like obsessive about it. So that to me is one of our greatest challenges because Lily loves her props, loves them.
Yeah, the matching is definitely a challenge.
It's a challenge.
But it's like in editing in general, that's always a challenge, and it's kind of like, this is why I like it. It's like a puzzle that you sort of find and put together and use the best performances, the best readings, and find a way around it.
I also think, our DP, Gail Tattersall, lights everybody so beautifully, and the show looks just so, like, delicious. but he works super hard on every lighting setup, and so we typically don't cross shoot. So for example, when we have a scene with June and Lily and they're having like amazing play between the words, or after the scene is even over and they're just running with it, we only have it on one side. And so you go in thinking like, oh, we have to cut in that amazing thing, but it's only on one of them, and you can't build it from, and you just have to sort of
Or you ADR in the response.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about Breanna in season 3 because, she was, in the first 2 seasons, I felt very much someone who was shaped by her mother and sort of the, she was in the company that she had. And it really felt like in 2 and in 3, she was trying to forge her own path in a way that was independent of that and make this company something else. I mean, what have you enjoyed about getting to bring her on that journey?
Oh man, so much. I mean, it's funny. It's funny sometimes I hear the character described as like a bitch.
Just keep in mind when you describe her, you're talking about me.
No,
so
I'm
like,
talking
it's nice
about me
if
too,
you
but-
say nice
but it's-
things.
I'll try to be kind. I'll try to be very gentle with you. But no, I don't see her that way at all. I really love her so much, and I understand her so much that I don't find. Yeah, I love her, and I see the heart of her so easily, and what's underneath some of the kind of posturing and covering and jokes. But what I've loved about season 3 and the journey that I've been on with Breanna is I think we get to see more of the cracks in the foundation. But also what I love is that I think our writers and Marta and Howard have really also maintained the integrity of the character. And because I don't want to see her fall apart or not be who she is. But I think we're just getting to see a little bit more of why she is who she is. And, Jane, I mean, if you look at Grace, I feel like we went through a lot growing up. I feel like it was really hard to live in that household. Mm-hmm. So I understand Breanna entirely just by watching Jane's performance.
And I will say that when we were casting, and neither of these roles were so easy to cast, we never described Breanna as a bitch or anything like that. We talked about why she was the way she was, and when June came in, she was exactly it right away. She understood. Not a bitch. What? Not a bitch. Not a bitch.
Look, I love the word. I don't mind it at all. I understand more.
Look,
of
it's
her.
hard. It's hard to be someone who wasn't the favorite.
Yeah.
Growing up, it's hard to
For
be that
sure.
one. Yeah.
Not easy.
But what was interesting is, having these 2 sisters who had the same parental experience in sort of childhood, you can totally see how they would actually take each path they took. It feels so real and authentic. I mean, Brooklyn, when you were sort of looking at that at the beginning, did you really understand how, Breanna and Mallory would grow up together and then take these 2 paths?
I did, but it's funny because I think when we were auditioning, I had the first 3 episodes of season 1. And initially, it's really funny because Mallory was trying to be just like her mother. And as we were shooting, what we found was that Breanna was so much like Grace. And I was actually more like Robert. And so, which makes sense as to why Mallory would be trying so desperately hard to get her mother's approval and to be just like her and live perfectly like her mother. But that surprised me. And I think we just saw that as we were shooting, that, the way that Mallory was written, the way that Breanna was written, we really sort of veered off into, directly into me, into Robert, and her, into Grace. And so that was a bit of a surprise because when I was first playing those initial episodes, I remember watching Jane and watching her performance and trying to kind of emulate some of the things she was doing as like a daughter would. And I think ultimately it made sense that she would be trying to do it, but it would also make sense that she would be completely failing at, trying to be Grace. So I don't even know if I answered the question, but
You did.
When
Yeah.
an actor breathes, you have one idea when you start writing, and then an actor comes in and breathes life into a role, and it changes it. And part of what happens when we get such an amazing cast is they bring other depth to it, than we had initially thought, or different depth. And you have to, as a writer, pay attention. Because no matter what you do, I'm not going to change who June and Brooklyn are as people and their experience can only heighten and deepen the character. So we have to, watch it and allow for it and write towards it.
Yeah, and I think the amazing thing about the characters on the show is nobody's one thing, which is so truthful to life. I mean, I'm very attractive, so that's kind of like the one thing that I am. But most people are, more than that. I'm not. But no, but it's so like people are multi-layered, and Grace and Frankie are too, and have so much of each other in themselves. Which is one of the things I love so much about the writing, that every character to me on this show contains multitudes and is not like just one note caricatures.
But that has to be the exciting thing, Hannah. I'm curious about producing and making television, because you have to remain so nimble and malleable to see what's happening around you and respond to it and then play to it. I mean, that has to be kind of one of the joys of working in this medium.
Absolutely. I mean, what's some of my favorite moments at work are the moments in between the moments where we're just sitting around talking about what we love in the script, and an article we read that can inform something, and there's this thing that happens from that writer's room. I swear they're witches. It's like a coven in there where they'll write something or break a story, and then it will happen to someone within a week.
Really?
Yes,
All
it has
the time.
happened.
It's weird.
It's happened
so
like
many
10
times.
times. With like the floor, the episode where they both throw their backs out, 2 people in the writer's room threw their backs out in the breaking of that story.
They really give a lot to make this show. Yeah.
Or Martin, we wrote that Martin had a heart attack, that Robert had a heart attack, and then at the end of that season, he had to have open heart surgery.
It's so crazy.
It does make you
crazy.
scared to write things.
Hell
I'm just
yeah.
like, I don't.
It
I mean,
does.
Scared to read
It does.
I keep telling her financial windfall, financial
Yeah.
windfall, financial windfall.
Everyone wins the lottery. We all.
That's not fun.
Of course.
But it does speak to, I think, how organic and real these stories are. They're just like, you don't even realize that they're around you all the time until you're talking about them 24/7, and then you see it everywhere. And people are coming up to us and saying, "This is my story."
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. I'm curious. I mean, what kind of conversations are you having with fans and with viewers? I mean, when they approach you about the show, what are they saying?
I have to say, one of my favorite conversations was, this is where we shoot Mallory's house. We've known the family who lives there for a long time, didn't realize it was their home, but I found out after we shot the first season there that her parents were married 25 years and her father came out.
Wow.
Right?
They said they wouldn't have let filming go on in their house, but she felt such a connection with the story that she was like, this feels kind of too kismet to not be part of it.
Wow.
So those are actually that conversation, women saying that they appreciate the honesty of how hard it is because they feel like it's the first time they've heard the truth. I mean, no one told me that you get to a certain point and you start losing pubic hair. No one told me. I think it's important to know.
Well, also, there was a gentleman who, I don't know if he works at the festival, that I met yesterday, who came up to me, and I told him not to make eye contact with me, and he did anyway. But whatever. But he was telling me that he's a gay man in his 60s living in Texas, and that this show has truly, so many people he knows, and he came out later in life, have seen the show, and in its own way, I find this show to be incredibly subversive and progressive, and in a way that I think people around him and in his world could digest quite easily. I think that's one of the really cool things about this show, that the tone can be incredibly light at times, and you're laughing, but there's a certain part of the population that's really listening and really caring about these characters when they might not, or when they might think that they are wrong for living the lives that they lead. So I think in its own way, it is changing hearts and minds. So I was really moved by that, and I think that's an incredible response to the show, that it meant so much to him for that
And
reason.
that was a wish that we had when we started, is that it would be subversive in a very quiet way, that you fall in love with Robert and Saul and don't even think about that it's a gay relationship, it's a relationship. So that was the hope. I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, and I just hope nobody feels like comfortable talking to me after this, because that's not the point of the story. It's not the point of the story. Okay?
Not the takeaway. But on the subject of not making eye contact. No, and I agree that, I do think that there is so much for people to take away from this. And I'm curious for the two of you, well, for all of you, in this production company that you have that makes the show and makes other content, what are the stories that you want to be telling at this moment?
We talk about this all the time.
Go ahead, Hen.
Well, one of my favorite things about our company is we did like a deep soul searching before we really kind of launched ourselves, and had like a strategic planner, and really kind of tried to be super thoughtful about the kind of company we want to be, the kind of stories we want to tell, and who we are as storytellers. And so we came up with our mission statement, which I just love so much because it says it all, and it's that we are serious joy makers. And I think, like, front to back, that's true. We want our content to make joy, not just in the comedic sense, but just be, the joy that you get from a story well told. But we also want to create joy for the people that we collaborate with, and amongst ourselves, we work super, super hard, like too hard for it not to be joyful.
And we are very committed to doing things that we feel passionately about, things that we would die if the story weren't told. And those are the things we head towards. And I can't say that that is defined by any one thing, except that we know in our hearts that we have to tell the story.
We lost the rights to one property that we really loved, and I was bereft for about a week. They had to console me, but really it is about deep connection to the material, and when we feel it, there's nothing that's going to stop us from making the stuff that we love, and that's the point.
And I think what it ends up coming down to, ultimately, when we are trying to figure out why is it that we're all so obsessed with this or that, it's about humanity. Like finding humanity where you didn't think it existed before, or enhancing a sense of humanity in an othered community, or in a character who might not obviously be humanized. And I think that ends up being what's at the bottom of why we love stuff.
And just one more layer on top of all this is that being a company of women, there is a level of humanity, understanding, compassion. I worked with men for a long time, and going home to put my kids to bed was something that was frowned upon. But we cover each other. We cover each other because there's no point in working this hard if you can't balance a life somehow. So we cover each other's butts because we truly believe that to be true. We have to have joy too.
But and it's also, and I have to give you all credit, because there's constant conversations about better representation in front of the camera and also behind the camera. But I think a lot of times people stop with writers and directors who are non-white men, and this really goes deep into your company. I mean, I looking at the credits, you can see that commitment to hiring women and to hiring, you need like a couple men for optics, but like, no, but frankly,
and Howard.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's really commendable, because at the end of the day, like, nothing will change if people who are in power aren't the ones to enact that change. And can you talk a little bit about that commitment to hiring women and to hiring sort of the people who need that first opportunity to then have the career that they would have given that?
Hannah, why don't you speak to that?
Why?
Well, I think
Go ahead.
we hire the best people for the work. It doesn't matter what sex they are, or how old they are, or how young they are. I think that's first and foremost, as someone asked you yesterday.
Yeah, but by the same token, we say, send us your women. Let's see who's got who's doing the good work, but no one's seen it yet, or they've only done it, hidden in the shadows. Let's bring that out. We try very, very hard to balance the writers' room, to balance the heads of departments, to balance our directors, and to make sure that everyone is represented. I don't know that I would hire someone who has absolutely no experience just because it was someone of color or a woman. But if we were to sit down and meet with that person and she were to kick ass, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And a lot of it actually comes down to what happens in the meeting. Even more important than what does the reel look like? Because it could be a great reel, but then the person sits down with us and the question is, are you one of us? Are you going to get in there and collaborate and kick some serious ass out there? Or are you going to try to take over? Are you going to be too meek? We got some hefty women. So it really helps that when someone comes in, that we feel like there's a real connection between the people.
Yeah.
If you're, you guys gave me that opportunity on this show. Like, I had worked with Marta and Robbie on various things, and when they were doing season 1, they had reached out to me, and obviously I interviewed with everybody, but they gave me my first opportunity because it's like my first big editing opportunity, and I love working with them, but I mean, I don't know if it's just because I'm a woman, but
no, we love you, Sarah.
No, because
but
you're a kick-ass
no,
editor.
definitely, and I worked hard and proved it to them, but yeah,
and
they
they became our primary editor.
Yeah, I moved up, so I've been the lead editor for a while, but yeah, they gave me the opportunity. It was great, and they really are the women to work for, because not all women are as supportive and loving. And they really are, and they want everybody to have their life but feel appreciated, and they do empower everybody, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, and I think it's the environment that too, because and she's not hired on the show, but a friend of mine who's a writer who wants to learn how to direct just shadowed one of our amazing directors, Rebecca Asher, and Robbie was so wonderful to her, and Marta and Hannah for giving her this opportunity, and she just came and saw the work, and it was an enormous experience for her. And so it's not, I don't think it's just about hiring. It is, a lot of this is about hiring, but it's also about creating an environment in which something just like that is possible, which is nurturing a woman.
Members of the family. That's what we're looking for.
And they give people the opportunity, a fair opportunity to let them shine and see if they can do it.
But I would also say it extends to casting, too, because when I see a script and there's Dr. So-and-so or Principal so-and-so, it never crosses my mind that couldn't be a woman as well. Yeah. And in other shows, that's not always the case. I have to ask. I have to go through a stupid thing like, could it be a woman? And then they stop and think. I know that'll be fine.
I would love to open it up to your questions now. So if you haven't, just raise your hand. And yeah, we'll start right there. You can't see me, but I'm pointing at you. Yes, great. No, but if you say it, I will repeat it if we can.
Okay, so I've seen some interviews with Dean, Breanna, and Lilienfield saying that they love it if the show could come out more frequently, like 2 seasons a year. Is there any response?
No. No.
I felt a wave of stress just happen on it.
It takes us a full year from when we start the writing process until we're finished post. And for the first couple seasons, we did 3 seasons in 2 years, and it nearly killed us. So 1 a year is really all you can manage, because we can't be finishing post on 1 season, starting the next season without knowing what we have. And also for the writer's brain to have a little break so that stuff can start to bubble up again, rather than your brain being so exhausted, all you want to do is drown yourself in a bathtub, Yes,
because it strikes me that this show, more than a lot, has a lot of sort of lived-in experiences that we're seeing on screen. I mean, when I see what happens to these families, I feel like I am seeing manifestations of what the writers have also been through.
Oh, God, yeah. You should hear some of the stories.
The other thing is we're a little bit at the mercy of Netflix in terms of when they release the show. So, you know, we in fact, last year we released in March instead of May. So that was a little bit sooner than it had been the previous year. So it's really, that comes into play also.
For sure. Thank you. Other questions? Yes, right there.
Hi. I'm just wondering, going from producing and writing in a traditional broadcast format for years and years and years, I guess this is more for you, Marta. What's the difference now working with someone like Netflix where you almost don't have to tell a huge story in a pilot and like pray that the audience gets it right away? Like you have 10 episodes to sort of develop a story. What's that been like for you?
13, but the rest of it was pretty close. You know, I have to say the greatest advantage is that you are not arbitrarily forced into a structure. When you write for network television, you have your cold open, this many minutes before the first commercial, this many minutes before the second commercial, this many minutes before the third commercial, and then your tag. And it forces you to inorganically tell a story. What's fantastic about doing something like Netflix is take as much time as you need to tell your story. You can have 27 minutes, you can have 34 minutes, whatever you need, within, you know, the budgetary allowance. But the story then tells us what the structure is. And you can feel it rather than be forced into something. So that organic storytelling is very, very exciting. The other thing that is wonderful, network television doesn't like arcs because once you syndicate, things can be out of order and I guess people get confused, I don't know. Netflix loves the arc. They love the chapters of the story so that you don't have to tie everything up in every episode. Each episode needs a beginning, a middle, and an end, but you can tell a story over 3 or 4 episodes. You can tell a story over a season. And for the writer, that's very liberating.
For the casting director, it's a nightmare.
What do you mean?
Because we have to keep bringing back actors, and they're not always available when we need them. It's a nightmare.
But for editing, the time constraint is nice because we can say, oh, take this out or add this, and it could be as long as we want or as short as we want, and it's kind of nice. It's very freeing.
Yeah, it must feel more like writing a book than a television show in some ways.
I've never written a book. It sounds really awful. But that's what I hear.
Do we have another question? Yes, right over there. How often do you have female directors, and how important is it to you to have female directors?
How often? Probably. I mean, one of the women who was supposed to be here today who couldn't come, her name is Rebecca Asher, and she is one of our favorite, most beloved directors. I'd say half and half.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of it honestly has to do with availability. You know, we try to meet new directors every year and try to increase our stable because when we shoot near pilot season, we tend to lose directors to pilots. It is very important to us that we have a mix of people because everybody brings something fresh to it. You know, but we are also under the restriction of other people's schedules.
I also think that if our director isn't a woman, they need to love women. We don't hire people really at any level of the production who really don't love women.
That's a really good point.
Because they can just relate to it differently, especially with the characters or the scene. And you notice it when you see the footage of the director really gets it. And you don't have to be like a certain age. You just get it and you understand it. You know, it makes a difference.
Absolutely. Do another question? Yes, right here.
I love the guest stars that come on, but I think my favorite was Joe Morton as a gay man. I mean, it was enlightened and sweet and funny. But do you have people coming to you and saying, "Put me in, you know, let me be in a scene"?
luckily, when I reach out to people, they want to be on the show.
Maybe they just don't have your contact information
Yes,
if
that's
they
it.
do want to be on. Maybe it's as simple as that.
Tracy Lillienfield, 323-8986.
It was thrilling when we had Joe because he won his Emmy on Sunday night, and we had him at work on Monday. It was fun.
But I mean, can you talk a little bit about, because that is the other wonderful thing about this. There have been so many amazing people who've gotten to come on. I mean, who have you particularly enjoyed writing for? Who's been sort of like a one-episode moment? Or are there people that you're hoping to have on moving forward?
Oh my God, so many. I mean, Millicent Martin was Ernie Hudson. Ernie Hudson, my God, he is just yummy. He's yummy. Babe,
Oh my God.
Estelle
Broke
Parsons.
my heart. So good.
I mean, my God, we're getting to work with these actors who have this breadth of experience, and it's just thrilling, and they bring so much, and they seem happy to be there.
They are so happy to be there. And our cast, and thanks to you and everybody, treats our guest stars so well. And that's always a big thing. And when I get calls from agents to say that the cast was so warm and Marta was so fantastic and everybody from top to bottom was so terrific to them, that gets out there and it makes it easier. And
Well,
you get
it
more and
is
more
true.
people.
I feel like before I did this, I started doing Grace and Frankie, I did so much guest star work. And this is a bit of a tangent, but you are treated very differently as a guest star normally. And you kind of go into a trailer, nobody tells you where to sit. I mean, whatever. I'm not going to describe the problems of an actor in Hollywood because people have it a lot harder. But it's a very, when you're trying to, you know, be vulnerable and play a character, you're treated with such, you're like given a tube of lipstick and told to, you know, go on your merry. I'm like, where's my makeup? But it's just a very different experience than being a series regular in a show where you're taken care of and you know the crew and you know everyone's names. And so, yeah, I feel like a lot of us are very intentional about, and that's across the board, our hair and makeup department, everybody is very intentional about making these actors who are coming to share something of themselves feel like it's a safe space, because that is one of my gripes about the way, you know, the industry is set up, that I feel like guest stars who are, you know, are great actors are just thrown in and expected to really fend for themselves.
Do you let guest stars look you in the eye on set?
No, of course not. When I say I'm nice to them, I mean from afar.
Right.
Brooklyn?
I just had to ask. I feel like it's important to know.
Yes, right
Oh,
here.
they know.
No, we do not. We have a pre-production period during which we arc out the season. We have arcs for the characters that we break out, and we break the first 6 stories. But as the season goes on, and this is the reason you don't write it ahead of time, you learn stuff. And you thought, my God, I love this story, and then you get in the middle of it and you go, oh, it's dreadful. We can't go down this road anymore. Or, on the other hand, you start a story that you think isn't going to be anything, and then someone like Megan Ferguson gets cast, and there's chemistry between her and Ethan Embry, and you go, ooh, we got some story here. We didn't know that was going to be there. So you have to stay facile and nimble and flexible throughout the season because things constantly change. And then there's something you've been planning from the beginning, and you're really excited about it, and you get to the end of the season, and suddenly your studio and your network goes, I'm not so sure about that. And you've been building to it all season, so now you have to sort of take that into consideration. So it is a constantly changing experience.
I have to say, this is apropos of nothing, but one of my favorite things last season was how much everyone hated Bud's girlfriend. Oh my God. It was so funny. Every time he would leave the room and the 3 of you would be together, just like, oh, it tickled me every time. Every time.
She's the worst. And also amazing. She's just the worst. She's the worst and such a wonderful actress. That's another piece of casting that I thought was so brilliant because she underplays it, and Lindsay Kraft plays that part so beautifully because it's so real. Disturbingly real.
That was the thing. I was like, I know her. Like, every one of my friends has dated her. It's terrible. Right there.
Am I imagining it, or did I read somewhere that the gorgeous beach house is modeled
That is correct.
And I might be imagining this as well. At the men's new house, the old set she went out.
That is an imagining. No, that's not a thing.
That's your sexual
But the first
fantasy.
one is a thing. And what's funny about the first one is we have a stage where the beach house is, and it's 15% bigger than my home. So I go into my house and go, what's wrong? Why does my house feel so small?
Right here.
Marta, what was it like to be reunited and work with Kudrow again?
It was like going home. It was really fun. It was so much fun. I mean, we worked together for 10 years, and it was a wonderful working relationship then, and it was so much fun to come back to it as two more mature women who've spent more time in this industry and have, in some ways, stepped away from that to find new pieces of themselves and then come back together. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful.
Yes, if you don't know, Lisa Kudrow is in the next season of Grace and Frankie.
Not the whole season.
No. Do we have another? Yes, right there.
I'm curious about the gun. Was it always going to be a gun?
We have talked about the gun bit from season 1, that the idea that Grace might have a gun, we've talked about from season 1. We knew that Frankie would hate it. We never quite found the way to do it until season 3. And it was always meant to be a gun. We really liked having the discussion between these two women of, maybe Frankie opening up to the idea why somebody might feel the need for it, and maybe Grace understanding why someone would be so against it. We felt it was a good dialogue. And without saying one of them is absolutely right and the other one is wrong.
Yep, right here.
When it comes to Babe's story, I don't think I've ever seen that on TV where you talk about somebody wanting to end their life. And how did you go through that without kind of propagating that thought of it being okay if people want to commit suicide?
Not unlike the gun, you've got to find all the sides. I totally believe in the right to do that, but I also understand that Grace doesn't. That she is a woman of faith, doesn't believe it is her place, and we had to give her the voice and to hold that part of the argument in a way, again, where no one is right and no one is wrong. But ultimately, this woman was going to make this decision whether or not we thought it was right.
And a beautiful part of that story, I thought, which was very important to me, was the time it took even Lily to be okay with it, which is very real in those situations.
Do you have maybe a last question? No?
I hope
Great.
this one's really good. Oh, there's no more.
Well, it's okay. I have 6,000. You have finished filming season 4?
No,
You're
we are shooting episode 10
Okay.
out
We
of
gotta
13.
Well, what can you tell us about sort of the next chapter in the lives of these people?
This next chapter is really about, for the women, coming to terms with age, coming to terms with how old they are, where their bodies are at this point, where their minds are at this point, and what does that mean? What does that imply? So we are definitely heading down that road in season 4.
Well, and I'll turn to the actors. Can you give us a little bit sort of about what you're excited for people to see with your characters this season?
Well, without revealing too much, I feel like we take a deep dive in season 4 into Breanna's love life and really trying to make it work, and really
Breanna has a problem.
Again, it feels like an attack on me when you say these things. I'm just letting you
fine
know.
with it, but Jarett's really upset. Yeah, she does have a problem. But yeah, that's in store for season 4. And then there's some other stuff. There's some complications at Say Grace in season 4 that are really interesting, and Mallory's involved in that storyline. What else, Brooklyn Decker?
Well, what I'm excited about is I think, Mallory's going through this divorce. It's obviously the first part of season 4. She's definitely in a rut going through that loss. But for me personally, what I love about Mallory this season is that I really am entrenched in the entire family, I think, more than ever before. I think I've been so caught up in my own world and my kids and my husband and how shitty things are for me that I actually haven't really been there for my family. And for the first time, Bud and Mallory have their first scene together, ever. In 4 seasons this season, just the two of us. Yeah. Yeah, like our first.
Interesting.
Just the two of us. And there's a lot of that season 4 for me. So as an actor, it's just fun because I feel like I get to be a part of so many different storylines this season. And I think for the first time, she's, Mallory's finally living outside of herself and her family. I mean, her immediate family, her and her 4 kids.
Let's be honest, the characters are in their mid-70s.
Not Breanna and Mallory.
No.
Grace and Frankie are in their mid-70s. So things start to happen in your mid-70s that you have to deal with. The car starts to break down.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, though, hearing Brooklyn say that she has her first scene, Mallory and Bud have their first scene this year, is it feels like 4 seasons in to still have new moments with characters really just speaks to the theoretical longevity that this show could have. This is me saying make 1,000 seasons, basically. But does it feel that way? But does it feel that way to all of you that, yes, you're 4 seasons in, and it still feels like we're just at the starting line in some ways?
As a writer, every story is terrifying, and there's always that fear that you'll run out. But I actually find that what Brooklyn just said gave me a lot of hope. Because you forget, when you're a writer, you're so entrenched in the minutia of the story, and you get so stuck on should it be potato chips or corn chips that he's eating? Well, corn chips are funnier because of the K sound. You get so caught up in that stuff that you forget how much life there is in something. The fact that we are in season 4 and not having trouble coming up with story lets me know that the show has legs. And it's our job at the end of each season to ensure that the following season has legs.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for being here today, but more importantly, thank you for this show. It is so tremendous. It's so wonderful. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to the ATX volunteers. Yes, and everyone enjoy the last day of ATX. Thank you.